Right. Good afternoon, councillors, officers and members of the public. I will just run through some housekeeping rules. Can I request that mobile phones are turned off, and if not, they can make a contribution to the Chair's charity. I would also like to inform everyone that this meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. So we welcome any members of the public that are joining us. Right. Are there any apologies?
Mr Chairman, there are apologies from Councillor Brendan Lovell-Moore, Councillor Maurice Eglin and Councillor Mark Bengelli.
Thank you. Right. Now we move to the minutes of the meeting on the 16th of June. Are there any queries or comments on them? No.
Hi. Just a couple of very small points. One was on page 7. It says Maurice Eglin rather than Morris. So that's just a spelling thing. And the other one on page 5, it was just a point of order. I wondered, it says minutes of the meeting were proposed by Councillor Eglin, seconded by Michael Whitworth. Because I'm an independent, can you just clarify? I know we spoke about this before. Can you just clarify? I shouldn't really be proposing or seconding, is that correct?
Just within the terms of reference for your appointment, it's a non-voting, so for the proposing and seconding, that would have been correct.
But I can still vote or not?
You would ordinarily have a vote at the meeting.
Thank you.
But just for clarity, going forward, I might incorporate that in when we mention the minutes and the approval of minutes, just to make that clear. But as the only returning member, I think, of this committee, you were pleased to second it on that occasion.
Okay, thank you.
May I seek a proposer, please? Councillor Garner, and a seconder, please. Councillor Conway. Are there any declarations of interest? No, that's good. Right, now, Claire, would you please introduce the annual governance statement, please?
Thank you, Chair. So the report before committee today is for the annual governance statement for 24-25. So this statement will pull on the Chief Internal Audit's report that was brought to this committee last month. Essentially what it will set out is an action plan looking at the key risks and significant risks that have been identified during 24-25 and sets out plans in how we're going to deal with those issues going forward into 25-26. The annual governance statement is a statutory requirement and will form part of the final statement of accounts. And therefore, I'm happy to take any questions on this and otherwise move to.
Are there any questions? Michael.
Sorry, just one for clarity really, is that where you say on page 16, the journey of improvement for the council will continue towards a sustainable basis in the current. What does that actually mean? The journey for the council will continue towards this. Is that sustainability as in sort of environmental sustainability or?
Thank you, Chair. So this refers to financial sustainability in the context of this report.
I have received some questions from Councillor Bengelli. Oh, sorry, Councillor Brackenbury. After you, David, go on.
I welcome the annual governance statement, and as is entirely to be expected with the team who's prepared it, it does set out a very clear statement of governance and some of the issues and challenges that we face. I do draw members' attention to the paragraphs starting on page 25, significant governance issues, and then moving on into risks and other key areas. Now, I know, I think we'll be discussing the risk register in more detail later on, So we'll come to that at its point, but it has got to be a clear, brief report that is digestible by non-members of the council, members of the public as well. So I welcome its succinctness, but I also welcome the fact that it doesn't completely shy away from some of the issues that we face.
Thank you, Councillor Brackenbury. Regarding the questions from Councillor Pengelly, I will suggest we deal with those outside of the meeting, if that's okay. Councillor Conway.
Hi there, just a quick one. On page 17 of the report, bottom of page 17, roles and responsibilities of elected members. Is this referring back to the previous time? Because you've got in there that there are 78 members, which is obviously changed now.
Oh, that's true.
So thank you, Chair. So yes, this report is referring to 24-25 financial year, so it will refer to the previous administration and the number of members at that point in time.
Do we have any other questions? I will then move to request a proposer, please. Councillor Brackenbury and a seconder. Councillor Sims. Thank you. Right, can we have a vote on the on the statement, please? All in favour, please raise your hand. Say that's unanimous. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the risk register, and Rachel, would you please introduce it?
Thank you, Chair. So the Council's Strategic Risk Register is brought to this Audit and Risk Committee on a regular basis throughout the financial year. So this is the first time it's been to the committees with the new membership. So just to briefly introduce the report. So a copy of the full Strategic Risk Register is provided from page 33 of your pack today. So any amendments to the register since it was last reported to a committee are provided in Table 1 on page 30 of your pack. So there have been 3 risks which have been removed, and we've given the basis for each of those, and 1 where the residual risk score has increased, and again the reason is provided on page 30. So the risk register is owned by the risk owners, so I'm happy to take any questions away and feedback to the committee on any of the questions in relation to the content of the risks. So I'm happy to take any questions, Chair, on the document. Thank you.
Do we have any questions, councillors? No? That's good. Well, may I ask Councillor Brackenbury?
Thank you, Chair. I'm new to this committee, so I'm new to the way in which information is disseminated. I do approve of the agenda item, the Appendix 2 of the risk heat maps, which actually give us quite a good positional analysis as to what the issues that the council are facing in terms of risk. And obviously, at 08 on the top Appendix 2 risk heat map, that's on page 37, the council's general fund is overspent. And I note that is A, very likely, and B, a high impact matter. So it's good to see that the serious issues that the council does face are recognised and again prioritised. And then of course there's a number of lesser risks in amber as possible but high impact. And again, I think it's good to see that those various risks are taken into account. Again, there's a lot of stuff which may not happen at all, but if they did, it would be high impact. For example, inadequate organisational capacity, which I don't see as something that is likely, but it would be bad if it happened. Legacy legal claims of predecessor councils. Well, colleagues might remember at the start of the previous administration we had some issues in that area. So the fact that the financial situation and that other risks are to be taken into account, I think, is very much to be welcomed. Thank you.
Thank you for positivity, Councillor Brackenbury. Right. May I seek a proposer then, please? Councillor Conway and a seconder. Councillor Garner. Right. May I ask you for everyone to vote in favour of the risk register? It's unanimous. Thank you. Right. The next item on the agenda is the Internal Audit Progress Report. May I once again ask Rachel to introduce it.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an update on the latest activity of the Internal Audit Service. So this is the regular report that I bring to each meeting of this committee. So I'll just again talk members briefly through the key sections. So a copy of this year's Internal Audit Plan is provided from page 54 of your pack today. So for each of those assignments, you can see the status as at the time of producing this report, and for any of those that have been finalised, the outcome of those as well. So these will all be reported to you throughout the year as they are finalised. So in section 3 is an update on the outcomes of some of those finalised audits. So we have had 7 audits which have been finalised since the last report that I provided to this committee. And these start on page 46 of the pack, so I'll just talk briefly through each of those and I'll be more than happy to take any questions from members on any of the detail as well. So in section 3.2 is an audit on safeguarding in transition. So this is looking particularly at where service users were previously under our children's services, and when they turn 18, whether they need to have a new assessment for adult social care support and how we support them through that transitions process. So we wanted to focus on safeguarding, and we took a very person-centric approach to our testing. So rather than just looking at controls, we actually followed a sample of service users through their journey as to the audit trail in relation to each of those and how that had complied with the council's procedures. Just to note that we were only able to look at activity around the adult social care side. Anything within the children's services would come under the Children's Trust, and we didn't include that. So we have included a recommendation in our report around an end-to-end assessment, which our adult services are keen to support the Children's Trust on working on as well. So in terms of the testing that we performed, we were satisfied with the compliance with the expected safeguarding procedures in the cases that we tested, and also the evidence of use of multi-agency relationships as well to support those service users. However, we did note that 43% of those tested had not fully transitioned to adult services by the age of 18, and there were some gaps in record keeping as well. So we just wanted to make sure that there's consistent use, for example, of checklists, to make sure that everything's been followed through and that we can see all of the evidence that we've followed all of the procedures in an expected fashion. So we've made a recommendation around supporting the consistent use of moving into adulthood work list, and some recommendations around supporting that process as well. So overall, we've given a moderate assurance opinion for both the control environment and compliance, and a medium organisational impact. The next relates to a housing audit. So this is an audit that we perform on an annual basis, and as it's such a key risk area for us as an authority. So this is around landlord health and safety. So we want assurance that our tenants are safe in the properties, that we're complying with our expected requirements under the relevant legislation and policies, and we're supporting people and making sure that we have the best servicing arrangements in place for all of our properties as well. So based on our testing, we were able to verify that 100% of the properties we selected for testing had evidence of gas safety certificates in place within the last 12 months, and those were all compliant. And that supported the reported data in terms of compliance in gas safety as well, which gave us some comfort around the accuracy of that reporting. We also looked at arrangements around servicing of passenger lifts, for example, and the conducting of surveys for asbestos. And we were satisfied that there had been improvements in relation to those areas since the last audit. Where we did identify some data discrepancies was around electrical installation condition reports. So we expect that these would be done on a 5-yearly basis under the Council's compliance policy. And when we tested a sample of these, whilst all of the data that we tested for Corby accurately reflected what had been reported, so where it had been reported that the last EICR was dated January 2025, we looked at the evidence and it supported exactly that date. When we looked at the sample of evidence for properties in Kettering, 85% of those differed in terms of the data that was reported and what we found in terms of the raw data and evidence. So what we've identified is some data integrity issue around that EICR data. And it's believed this may be something to do with the transfer of data into the new system. So what we've recommended is a full data cleanse on all of that EICR data within the system to make sure that accurately reflects the actual true position of the EICR certificates that are in place. We also identified that the Council's fire safety policy has not yet been approved and adopted. So since the last audit, there is a new compliance policy, which is a really good step forward, but the fire safety policy now needs to follow that and be suitably approved and adopted in practice as well. And there are also plans to implement a new water safety contract, which will again ensure consistency in that area as well. Lastly, in terms of damp and mould cases, we also did a little bit of testing on this again and identified in some cases, again, the data was not fully accurate and actually seemed to overstate the number of open cases, so under-reported the amount of performance in this area. Again, a data cleanse has been recommended and we're actually working with the team at the moment on how to take that forward. So overall, whilst some of the areas we identified last year have improved, we have identified some further data integrity issues, so we have given a moderate assurance opinion for both the control environment and the compliance, and a medium organisational impact on that one. The next was a financial audit, so this was around treasury management, and we were satisfied that the Council's treasury management strategy was compliant with expected practice, and then based on our testing of activity, again, that was all compliant with the expected controls in terms of investments and borrowing. So we had no issues, no areas for concern or anything to report to the committee, and a substantial assurance opinion for both the controls and the compliance with a low organisational impact on that basis. The next related to housing benefit and council tax support. So whilst the number of housing benefit claims continues to reduce due to universal credit, there's still some activity in this area, and we were satisfied that claims were being processed effectively based on our testing and our review of the performance information. What we did identify is that there is activity already underway to improve performance in this area, with turnaround times not currently being met around new housing benefit claims and new council tax support claims. So what we were able to see was the activity in Q4 was already showing an improvement in this area, so that was reassuring, and work is underway to continue to support that. We also identified a couple of data integrity issues around the performance data, just due to the classification of some of the activity, and again, that will be taken forward as part of their action plan. So overall, we've given a good assurance for the control environment, moderate for compliance, and a low organisational impact. The next report was the accounts payable audit. So this is an audit that we performed on the systems that are used by both ourselves, but also Cambridgeshire County Council, West Northamptonshire Council and Milton Keynes Council. So we're testing all 4 councils' use of the system, and our audit findings have been shared with all of the partners. So again, we were satisfied with the arrangements in place around control account reconciliations, which were being conducted in a timely manner and suitable independent review. We were also happy with the arrangements around BACS payment runs and the segregation of duties there. And also the software and proactive controls in place to identify duplicate payments and ensure that those are processed and reviewed in a timely manner. And also the recent amendment to their arrangements for changing bank account details to try and manage the risk around bank mandate fraud, with the introduction of some new systems there as well, which was reassuring to see. What we did identify was a couple of issues around the audit trail for what we refer to as spreadsheet interface payment files, which are payment files which are almost input straight into the system rather than via the purchase order process. And we just wanted to make sure that there's a good audit trail around those to make sure any differences in reconciliations is suitably recorded and acted upon, and that we have that evidence. So overall, we've given a good assurance opinion for both the control environment and the compliance, and a low organisational impact. The next was in relation to the resettlement scheme. So this was actually in relation to a number of schemes that the government has funded and gives us money as a council to fund and support individuals that are eligible under those schemes. So we were satisfied in terms of the council's controls that a good use of case management system was in place to administer those schemes and have good audit trails around each of the usage. We were also happy that the council had discharged its responsibilities in line with the requirements of the funding bodies in each case, and that the sample of spend that we reviewed was all consistent with the terms of the funding in each case as well. What we did identify was a significant carry-forward figure in relation to some of these schemes, which we know has already been identified, just to make sure that we're happy with how that's going to be managed and whether there's any risk of clawback, to ensure we have assurances around that. We did identify some differences which need to be looked into, and also some issues with cost allocations between the schemes, because there are some costs that essentially support all three, so we just need to see those split out and a suitable audit trail around those. And we also noted that in some cases, the fraud risks that have been identified by the government around the schemes rely on regular contact with the individuals, so that if we know, for example, a sponsor household still has the refugees or the asylum seekers in place to support them, we need to have that regular contact to make sure that they're still in place, so that we don't end up in a position where they have an overpayment. So we just identified again that there's a need to support them and have that regular contact, so that we know we don't get into that position of overpayments. So overall, we've given a good level of assurance for the control environment, and a moderate assurance for compliance, and a low organisational impact overall. And then finally, another financial system-based audit was the bank reconciliation audit. So again, this was based on year-end position for our bank accounts. So we were able to see that the council has good arrangements in place for its corporate bank reconciliations, with assurances and monitoring in place, and unreconciled items being cleared on a timely basis. What we did identify was some issues around the legacy bank account reconciliations, which we've noted within the report and in the findings here. We do know, however, that the legacy bank accounts are currently being closed, or may be closed since we'd conducted the audit. So these should be all in hand as part of that process. So with the actions taken forward will be taken as part of that. So again, a good control environment, but moderate for compliance, subject to those reconciliations being conducted and resolved, and a medium organisational impact. So lastly, within the report is an update on the implementation of actions arising from our audit. So we had 22 actions which were confirmed as implemented since the last audit, and that's provided for you in the table on page 64 of the papers. We currently have 71 actions which were overdue as at the end of July. So again, those are broken down for you in the table in the second and third rows. Currently there were 3 that fell into the category of being high priority and over 3 months overdue. And full details of those are provided for you in Table 3 on page 65 of the pack, with a latest status update and revised dates where appropriate. So I'll be happy to take any questions, Chair, on any of the detail within the report, but it's just a run through of the key sections. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions at all? Michael?
Thank you for the report, Rachel. Very clear as usual. 3.7 was on the safeguarding in transition. Now, where it says only 19% were complete MIA work lists, I'm just thinking these are quite vulnerable people often. In a practical sense, is there anything that should change that wouldn't, rather than just what they're designated as, children or adults? Is there a change to maybe payments they would receive, and if they don't get done in time, they're not getting the payments they should be getting? I'm just wondering, if you change, is it purely a titular change that you've moved from child to adult, or are there practical things that are not happening if they don't get that change?
Through you, Chair. Thank you. Yes, so just to explain, so if it may well be the case for some of these individuals that whilst they were subject to children's social care support, they may no longer be eligible for adult social care. So that could be quite a significant change for them in terms of their support. And that's why we have that support around the safeguarding element, to ensure we are identifying any safeguarding flags that give rise to any concern, and that we're making sure we use that multi-agency approach to support people through that process as well, because there is that reassessment of need, I suppose, under the new framework. So as part of that, there's a consideration, and that's one of the areas that we looked at as part of this audit, of if any safeguarding concerns are brought to light, whether that's a potential risk to themselves or to others, how is that flagged, and is that going through the right channels in terms of them being under this adult safeguarding processes as well. So all in all, it could be a bigger change, or it could be a smaller change, depending on the circumstances and the needs of the individual.
Thank you. Do we have any...
Sorry, can I just follow up on that, please, Chair? So we're saying then, just so I can clarify this in my own head, that it's not going to be a situation where you are receiving support, but because we've not managed to do the move in time, you're going to lose that support at 18, and you may suddenly be classed and saying, yes, you are going to get the support, but there's going to be a 2-month, 3-month hiatus where you're not getting support. That won't happen.
No, I don't believe that would be the case. I think it would just be a delay in the process, as far as I'm aware, but I can confirm that and get some confirmation for you.
Councillor Conway.
Thank you for the report. It's very detailed. Just a couple of questions on that. The fire safety policy you were talking about, you said it's not been completed on the properties yet. Do we know when that's going to be implemented and actually completed?
Yep, through Chair. Yes, so I know the policy has been drafted for some time, but it does need approval. I believe it will go to executive at some point this year. So I'm not sure on the date that it's planned on the work plan as yet, but it should go through, and then obviously that would be what they are then working to going forward.
And then just one more. On your page, I've got it, page 52, the 3.39, the checks. You've got 185 uncashed checks, valued at 14,000. Is that normal in compared to previous years? Is that? It seems a lot of money.
Claire's going to respond to that one.
We do still get a lot of checks. In terms of uncashed, so what we have is a policy where between all the legacy authorities we would have had various write-offs, or where we wouldn't cancel them because it costs too much money, and what we'll have then is lots of checks that are probably outstanding that may never be actually cashed. So it's a process of how long we leave them open for before we write them off. So there'll be low-level, low-value checks, but it actually costs us quite a lot of money to actually cancel them with the bank. So they do become quite prohibitive in terms of they could be like £2.50 and it might cost us £10 to actually cancel the cheque. So you have those sort of instances. So what we'll have is a big list of all our uncancelled cheques or unpresented cheques as we refer to them, and we will then go through the banks as we start to close off all our legacy arrangements in particular, and get rid of all those cheques that we believe. And it will be a time span. I would like to say normally we used to follow a 6-month rule, but I have had instances where it's been years and a cheque has still been cashed and the bank has actually still honoured it, unfortunately, after the normal protocol we'd expect. And moving obviously into our corporate bank account with Barclays, we would still expect to see cheques that come through. We don't issue that many, to be fair, across, well, we still have instances where, you know, the usual sort of council tax, housing benefit may still see cheques going out, and whether that's refunds or obviously the benefit payments, but they are becoming less and less.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Brackenbury.
Well, thank you, Chair. Again, thank you for the detailed report. I'm somewhat none the wiser in terms of the checks business, but you know, I do understand that you get these. You know, if you can't reconcile them or match them, it's sometimes very difficult. In fact, that brings on, does it not, to the wider point that was made later on in the report on bank reconciliations, that there are some issues regarding unmatched cash, basically. And I know from private industry that we've always had an item at board meetings about unmatched cash and so on. Insurance is a shocking business. But yeah, I mean, obviously you're keeping a close eye on it. Moving, if I may, Chair, to the item on safeguarding, I completely agree with Michael that the importance of under 18s transitioning into the adult world cannot be overestimated. It is such an important time. You know, suddenly you've been a child, you've been under the Children's Services, Children's Trust, and it's all wonderful. And then, boof, you're an adult. And making sure that that transition into adult life and the continuation of the support that the individual needs is so important. So I'm really pleased that the audit team have been working on this, and working no doubt with our own adults services, but also with the Children's Trust, to make sure that communications and liaison are as clear as can be. It's so important, this one. The other one is my favourite. Claire Edwards will know that I have frequently commented on this when I was in another role in the previous administration. Treasury management. It is something nobody really talks about, but it's so important. This council handles hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds worth of money, and in our coffers, and I just reiterate my commendation of the Treasury Management team. We've always managed to get a return on our investments that somewhat exceed the normal state of play with interest rates and so on. So very good, again, that you've worked through that, and that the assurances in this really important but unsung area are all good. So that's excellent, and also again, the resettlement scheme, highly, it's one of these very difficult schemes, because we are trying to work with government funding and government regulations and rules about it. Again, I'm pleased that we're keeping a good eye on it. My last point, Chair, really is looking into the future. With the table at table 1 from page 54 onwards, it's going to be very interesting to see some of the other audit subjects which are being dealt with, some of which are quite near to my heart. Some colleagues might remember I've been involved quite a lot in taxi licensing and planning and other adventurous things. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the audit team and how they view these services from their perspective. So again, thank you very much for the report.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have any other questions? Councillor Geary.
Just two small comments. In terms of the tables on page 34 onwards, really comprehensive. What might be useful is to show the riskiest item first, so that we have a list of the riskiest item at the top, just for readability. And then a small point, quite specific with regards to terminology. Terminology used with regards to SEND in terms of how we're going to spend monies. We use the term the invest-save model. I think I kind of sort of know what that means, but would just like to have confirmation.
Please.
Thank you, Jed. So just to confirm, this is a previous agenda item, I think, on the Strategic Risk Register. Is this on the Strategic Risk Register? Yes. Okay. Yes, so in terms of the order of the risks, as you say, it's not in a particular order in terms of grading. What we try to do is the risk map at the end is to then give you that context, I suppose, to try and put that into some shape or form that you can then see in terms of priority. In relation to the last, the second question was on the SEND
on the invest-save model.
The investor-save model. I don't know if I'm best placed to... I'm happy to take that away. I don't know if you're able to add anything on that. I can look into that and get you a written response if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any other further questions? No? Michael.
Sorry, yeah, on page 47, just briefly, 3.12. I understand where there will be issues with the EICRs, and I understand the new system and data input, etc. The concern for me is that EICRs, properties with no ECRs being reported as having them. I know from my experience in that sort of landlord landscape before, somebody saying to me, if something happens and you've not got an EICR correctly recorded, the ramifications are really quite serious. So I thought that might be an organisational impact as a red, but that's fine. When to be read for compliance, it says key controls are not consistently operating. Are we saying that these are not key controls then? That's it's maybe a terminology thing, but I just want to clarify that for myself.
Thank you, Chair. So, yes, just to confirm on this, so when we did look at it, as I say, for the Corby, all of the data was absolutely accurate. The dates were completely different when we looked at some samples for Kettering. So we're not in a position where we know they're not happening, but the data isn't exact on the system. So for a number of them, they did have them in place. And in fact, some of them that had in our raw data said that they had EICRs, had reported as not having them. So it went both ways. So actually, the performance figure is what we need to verify. So we're not saying that it's not happening at all. There just seems to be some data error, so the dates seem to have been matched against the wrong properties. So on that basis, we didn't feel the control was not happening or not working as it should. It was more around the data integrity for that, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Garner.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow up on Councillor Geary's point, I think maybe that table of risk could be made a little bit more user-friendly in terms of reading it, maybe with the idea of starting with the higher risks at the top and working your way down so that you're basically looking at the main
Sorry,
risks.
Councillor, we've moved on from that previous item.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, can I just raise the point as well about this Ukrainian resettlement scheme? Now, because obviously the situation in Ukraine has dragged on much longer than people were expecting. So obviously we're going to have a lot of families who took a family in, weren't anticipating that this was going to go on for so long. How is the council keeping track of that? And do we get 100% costs reimbursed on that from central government?
Thank you. So on this one, as I say, one of the controls we looked at was the audit trail around our contact with sponsor households, as you mentioned. Both to make sure that the support is there and that we're happy that things are working, but also to make sure we don't have any overpayments should the people move on and we continue to pay those monthly support payments. So that is the control mechanism to make sure that there's some support in place. Obviously, that's where we need to see that consistency, because as you said, some of this has gone on longer than perhaps was expected. So people may have moved on and moved out of the property. They may have moved on to other sponsors and so on. So there is a mechanism in place around supporting that process. In terms of the costs, obviously the money is paid across to the host families for that particular scheme. I believe that is funded by the government, and that's the process that we go through in terms of those payments. But I can get any details for you on specifics within that if you want any further information.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? I will then move for a proposer for the internal audit progress report, please. Councillor Brackenbury, and seconder. Councillor Sims. May I see a show of hands, please? Unanimous. Thank you. Well, that is the agenda items covered today, so I will call the meeting closed at 2:38. Thank you all.